On today's edition of Writing Notes, we're going to talk about sentence length and complexity and why you want to be aware of these. So, in terms of sentence length, generally speaking, the easiest way I think to break this up is that there are short sentences and long sentences. What exactly those two terms mean is going to be open to a good amount of variation. Generally, I would say that a short sentence is about 12 or less words, and a long sentence is 13 or more, but that's an entirely arbitrary distinction that I've made that no one else is necessarily going to agree with. But what's important about this is that short sentences and long sentences are capable of doing different kinds of rhetorical work. So short sentences are going to be really good for creating emphasis. They're going to read fast, so readers are going to move through them quickly, which is going to engage readers' attention and interest. And they're going to be good for producing a lot of energy. Long sentences, on the other hand, are going to be more descriptive. They're going to be more useful for elaborating, for providing additional information, details, etc., etc. The other thing with them is that they are going to read slower. So this is a way in which you can influence the pacing at which your readers read. Not completely, but you can make it move in that direction. Short sentences will read faster, long sentences will read slower, so if you want readers to be really energetically engaged, short sentences may be the way to go. If you want readers to be contemplative and to spend time thinking about your text, longer sentences are the way to go. The other component of sentence design you want to be thinking about is complexity. Basically, there are 4 types of sentences. There are simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and complex compound sentences. Simple sentences have a subject, an object, and a verb. The subject is the thing that does an action, the object is the thing that has an action done to it, and the verb describes the action. So, if we can take a very basic example, and we'll take basic examples throughout this. The dog barked at the cat. In this case, the dog is the subject because it's doing the action, barked is the verb because it is the action that's being taken, and the cat is the object because it's the thing that the action is being done to. So that's the most basic form of grammatically correct sentence. The caveat on that is that there are some sentences that are grammatically correct that don't have all of those elements stated, but they will have all of those elements at the very least implied. But that's a subject for a different video. So that's your most basic approach. It's a very direct, very simple way of conveying information. The next most challenging type of sentence is a compound sentence, which will have 2 subjects, 2 verbs, and or 2 objects. Not necessarily all of those always, but it'll have 2 or more of each of those things. So, for example, the dog barked and the cat fled. Here we have 2 objects, the dog and the cat, each of which is doing something. We have 2 verbs, barked and fled, each of which is describing an action. And we have 2 subjects, the cat, which is being barked at, and the dog, which is being fled from. So we have 2 sentences here. The other thing that's important about compound sentences is that they could be broken up into simple sentences. So we could say, the dog barked, period, the cat fled, period, and we have 2 complete simple sentences. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. There's no dependent clauses. That becomes important in just a second when we start talking about complex sentences, because a complex sentence is going to have one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. So an independent clause, as we've just seen, is something that can stand on its own as a grammatically correct sentence. A dependent clause, on the other hand, can't. It becomes a sentence fragment if left on its own. So, for example, the dog barked, which was loud. Here we have a simple sentence with not a simple sentence because we don't have a period, but we have an independent clause. The dog barked, something that could be a simple sentence. And we have a dependent clause, which was loud. This is a clause that, if we put a period after barked, this is a sentence fragment. This is no longer a complete sentence. And so it requires that connection with the previous clause in order for it to be grammatically correct. So that's a complex sentence. We got simple sentence, subject, object, verb, compound sentence, multiple subject, objects, and or verbs. We've got complex sentences. A subject, object, verb, and a dependent clause, or an independent and one or more dependent clauses. Then we've got the compound complex, which you can probably make a reasonable guess is a combination of the compound sentence with multiple subjects, objects, and verbs, and a complex sentence with a dependent clause. So, the dog barked, which was loud, and the cat fled. So again, we've got two subjects, two objects, two verbs. But we've also got that dependent clause, which was loud, stuck in the middle. So this is then one sentence that combines the elements of the previous three, in fact. So this is something that, again, you want to be thinking about how you want to set your sentences up, because this is one of the ways in which we build style and we build tone. So a lot of short, simple sentences is going to be very easy to read, but it may also come across as childish. A lot of long, compound, complex sentences may sound very studious, very scholarly, very contemplative, but it may either put your reader to sleep or confuse them, depending on how complex your sentences get. So you want to be thinking about that. You want to be thinking about how your sentence length and sentence complexity can be used to shape how your readers read. But I'm actually going to make the argument for sentence variation as being the most effective approach. And this has to do with reader psychology. So one of the things that is actually beneficial to us as writers when we have sentence variety is that it becomes more difficult to read our writing, which sounds counterintuitive. It seems like we would want things to be easier, but what I mean by this is that each sentence is asking the reader to do a slightly different cognitive task. And so that need to figure out what you have to do to understand each sentence actually keeps the reader actively engaged, as opposed to just passively skimming, which is one potential risk if all of your sentences are very similar. So the fact that on an almost unconscious level, because we don't usually notice sentence length or sentence complexity unless it becomes an issue of, I can't understand what this sentence is saying, which does happen. But we don't normally really notice these things. But on an unconscious level, we do. And so this is a way of keeping your reader engaged, keeping them thinking about the text itself without necessarily spending a ton of time and energy, without them having to devote a ton of time and energy to that engagement. So because it requires them to do something that's challenging but subtle, challenging but they likely don't realize that they're doing it, it's actually a really good way of keeping readers' interests and keeping readers engaged. So sentence variation, both in terms of length and in terms of complexity, is likely to be your best approach when you're trying to shape your writing, shape your sentence level choices. Thanks for watching.